Stephen Lawrence, you're here in Munich for a promotion tour for Wings. Do you think it's necessary that Wings have promotion? Do Wings need any promotion anymore?
Well, maybe Wings don't. Although I think that the fact that Wings haven't been on tour, it's good that some representative of Wings shows that Wings still care about the people out in record buying land. But Steve and myself, Lawrence, we have to let people know that we are really a part of the band and that we're not just session musicians or something like that just fatten up Wings, but we really are like 40% of the group. So when we come here, we represent everybody.
It's interesting what Lawrence says, that there's never been a tour. Could there be a hint that because you are here, there will follow a tour in a few months or something like that?
Yeah, this is almost certain. We intend to start rehearsals in September and hopefully to be playing shows around about October, which at the moment is very loosely scheduled to include the UK and Europe. Immediately. See, both Lawrence and I are very keen to get out and play live now. In fact, this is one of the reasons why we waited until we had an album in the can that we were a part of before we actually toured. Otherwise, I'd be going out playing other people's parts with hardly any sort of direct concern myself. And it was stressed at the beginning that we were looking for a band and not just a couple of pickup musicians, because I don't think I could have done it like that. I had to ask myself if I could add 1/5 to the band and not just be sitting there like a puppet. And this has worked, and I think that it shows him back to the egg as an album. I think it's got a lot of strength, and we've definitely sort of like put our own identities into that music, into Wings music.
Interesting to hear, because he said we're going to put a lot of our own identity into Wings music. In former times, Wings sounded like an experiment just of Paul McCartney, and in the meantime it's a success of Wings, and I think there is a great difference between. And you said a few sentences before that you together are a part, I think the fourth part of Wings. How important is Paul McCartney in person for Wings, and how important are the rest? Is there a hierarchy or something like that in the group?
I think creatively there is a hierarchy, because obviously Paul is the major force, major motivational force. He is the leader of the group. There's no disputing that. And I'm sure that if Wings didn't exist, Paul would sit in his studio at home and churn out an album every year, or maybe 2 albums a year, or maybe more, or maybe less. He can't stop making music, but he needs people around him to help him make music, and so we're sharing in that experience, and it's a responsibility on us that he should make better music. So our job is to, if you like, compete with him, to make him better and to make ourselves better as we go along. There is that hierarchy, certainly, but the responsibility is ours to rise up in the hierarchy and compete with Paul on his level. This is very difficult, but we have our own things to offer, and so in our own way I think we can try and do that, and I hope that the new album shows that we've been injecting something of this kind of enthusiasm and our abilities into the band, so that it sounds like a group and doesn't sound like a Paul McCartney album.
What normally people can't imagine, what I can't imagine too, is when we see a group like Wings, for example, on stage, with the excellent music, with the shows, it works, everything's alright, but we never can look behind the scene. Could you describe how normal music practicing or something like that works? Because you don't live together, everybody of you lives in his own house, and how often do you meet, who brings the ideas, and something like that? Could you describe a little bit?
Well, basically what happens is we do lead a pretty intense social life at the time when we're working. We work very hard as a band. We work extremely hard. It doesn't necessarily always appear to be so, because a lot of the stuff we do, particularly over the last year, and since both Lawrence and I have joined, has been kind of hidden away in studios and what have you, and we've been making films and stuff. We talk a lot, we kick around a lot of ideas, obviously because we're a lot of the time on location. We're eating, we're sharing meals together, we are living with each other. When we started the album we were, because we were all living up at Scotland. So it is quite an intense kind of personal relationship as well, which carries on whilst we're working. Behind the scenes is, I don't know, but as far as touring goes, or live shows, I imagine it's pretty much the same as in the other show. From my experience, like, you get very strange things happening when a band takes to the road, and I know it's going to be the same with this band. There's no point denying it, because the same problems always come up. It's just something you can't deny, and sometimes tempers get a little bit frayed, but it's all because of the pressure that's on you and the adrenaline thing that you go through in a performance. And over a period of years I've come to cope with it.
It's alright.
It's okay. Yeah, I'd like.
You were stopped. You were very interrupted.
That's all right. I was just saying that from the experience of shows that I've been involved in. I've got to the point now where I can't be bothered at the end of the show if something has gone wrong, if something has blown out, if something has gone wrong, an amp's blown up, or there's been some even major disaster, which has often occurred to me. There's no point in going backstage and like tearing each other's throats out, which I see so many bands doing. So the feeling that's within this band at the moment, I don't think will arrive at that point, but there's always problems. But as regards what it's actually like behind the scenes, we've not really been behind the stage set yet, so I can't really tell you what that's like. In the recording situation, it's a different story.
Yeah, when we're recording, it's we go into the studio, say Monday morning, or 12 o'clock on a Monday, we go into the studio. Everybody will pick up a guitar and we'll play. Maybe we'll run the tape machine to record it, but we'll play anything, rock and roll, reggae, whatever anybody happens to feel like doing. Maybe for a few hours, maybe 4 or 5 hours sometimes. Then maybe we'll work on some track that we've been working on from the album, or maybe Paul will say I've written a new song, or Denny will say I've written a new song, or Steve or I will say that, or Linda, and we'll try that, and we'll maybe play around with that. Maybe we won't record it, just have like something, just kick something around, ideas.
But it sounds to me like a little bit like a lot of your songs happen by incident.
Oh, certainly, that kind of thing can happen. For example, Old Siam Sir, on the on Back to the Egg, we were having a jam session one day. Linda was playing drums, Steve was playing piano, and we started to play just a nice feel, and Steve was playing a tune that he'd written on the piano, and then Paul and I started playing something completely different over the top, and that became the instrumental section in Old Siam. And then Linda had an idea for a little piano figure, and that became part of the song. So they came together in a slightly haphazard way. It is a bit accidental. Other times Paul will say, I've written this song, this is how I want it to go, and he'll play it, and then we'll try ideas, and then maybe he'll want something specific, maybe he won't. From a guitarist point of view, I always find that he gives me the space to find my own thing, and I ask Steve about it from a drummer's point of view.
Yeah, it's the same thing. I mean, it's important for me working with the bass, because like the bass and the drums is really the structure of the thing. It's the foundation, if you like. So when Paul comes up with an idea, often he's playing it on guitar or piano and there's no bass there, or Lawrence is playing bass, or Denny is playing bass. Sometimes for me that takes me a while to formulate an idea, but once again, I mean, you see, you can write a song and you can have a preconceived idea about how it should be, and then sometimes you can just write a sketch, and you let everybody else fill in the colours, and Paul is like that. I mean, it's kind of almost like a 50-50 balance of the two things. But as I say, like, this is the first album we've been involved in. It's the first time we've been involved in actually making music as a part of Wings, and I feel to an extent we're only really scratching the surface of what we could do. Although it's great, I mean, I'm really pleased with the way it's come out. I'm very happy with it. I still feel that, given a big tour, and time to think and sort of like really establish the band as a full working unit, which is important now, that the next album will go into something else again. You know, I think it'll free up a lot. It'll be a lot easier and probably faster. You know.
That brings me to an interesting point. The question should be, when you are part of Wings, where do you listen with your ears? Are other musicians also interested, or now at this point is there only interested in what you feel? That means, do you listen into yourself to find your own music, or do you listen to others to find your own music?
I think you find music everywhere in your environment. You just switch on the radio, or you hear a child singing in the street. You find things inside yourself, outside yourself. Working with Paul, he has a wonderful ability that if you have something you feel, this is how you think it should go, and then Paul will point you in a direction that you've never thought of. He will make you find music inside yourself you didn't realise you had. And I think that's the great experience of working with somebody like him, is that he's constantly pulling things out of almost nowhere. Off the wall, completely off the wall. Sometimes we'll do it in a ridiculous way. Sometimes, you know, like, there have been times when I've made the guitar very hard to play, just because you maybe think of something different to play. You don't play the same regular way, or else he'll maybe put the guitar through a funny box and it will sound weird, and you can't play your normal way. Anything just to make you look in a different direction, different, you know, a tangent, a different kind of direction to what you would normally do. So that's finding new kind of music from within you. But also, like, I mean, we listen to everything new that's happening, and you learn from, you know, from anything, really.
Let's change to quite another point. When you're famous, in a certain frame, famous, suddenly people come and ask you about your opinion, about youth problems, drugs, clothes, fashion, and so on. Do you think that musicians are the right people to ask for youth problems, to be asked for youth problems and things like that?
Not really, because that's putting a lot of responsibility onto a person who probably isn't capable of offering anything. There are one or two people in this business that can offer opinions. I can offer an opinion, but it'll be no different to your opinion, I shouldn't think, or anybody else's. So, I mean, it's pointless me saying this, that and the other. I mean, I think that's those kind of decisions, and youth problems and drug problems and all the rest of it, are down to the individual. I don't think you can... It's an attitude.
Really?
I believe.
Okay, well, my feeling about it is that the best commentary on, say, for example, the problems of youth in the cities is what the kids themselves do, which is like punk music or new wave music. That they are the best commentators on their own situation. I mean, for me to come along and intellectualize about it is not going to mean a great deal, because all you have to do is listen to their music and you understand what their problems are.
Yeah, partly, but can't give you right completely, because there's one thing I wonder about. Punk music was just born, and in the next moment industry had seized the whole punk scene, and there hasn't been any more typical punk scene for the youth.
I mean, that always happens. I mean, that is going to happen whatever you do.
Yeah.
It happened with Flower Power in the 60s. It happens with every major force, because industries will always pull upon something and they see there's a demand. Where there's a demand, people can make money. So the businessmen and the sharks and whatever you want to call them, they step into that. Also, it doesn't always have to be a bad thing. It depends how it's handled. But with the punk thing, I just think, from the people I've talked to, they feel no differently to the way I felt when I was at that particular point in my life. And a lot of those opinions that I had then haven't changed, but a lot have. Just because you grow up and you realise that you're not gonna make these drastic changes. You can express an opinion, and hopefully people will listen. But I mean, what is an opinion? It's like when a critic reviews an album. It's only his opinion. if he hates the album, just for every word he prints, there's 10,000 people that love it. So I mean, it's only as valid as it is that instant. So if I say, you know, I mean, like, drugs is a terrible thing, and the people, I mean, what good's that going to do? I mean, they're still going to go out and get loaded. I mean, really, I mean, I'm not going to be able to stop them. It's not my responsibility. It's not my job. I don't necessarily agree with mixing stuff like politics and drug problems in music. I don't feel that righteous about it myself, because I've been involved myself. So how can I preach anything? I'm not going to start preaching. I don't want to preach. All I want to do is play good music.
Yeah.
And the essence of music to me is for people to enjoy themselves.
No more.
And well, there are other things. There are other emotions that you can express in music. You can express virtually any emotion in music. But there's a way of doing things, and I think there's a wrong way of doing things, which some people have got very dangerously near to, you know, because you're in a responsible position, whatever way you look at it. If we started saying, like, hey, heroin's a great thing, everyone should take heroin, a lot of people probably would.
Can imagine you.
Huh?
Can imagine, yeah.
Sure. So if, on the other hand, I don't believe for a minute that anybody's taking heroin, it's going to stop by me saying it's bad.
Yeah.
I can't see that, you know. So I mean, I do say it's bad, but that's not going to change anybody's opinion.
Yeah, Lauren, good.
And Steve actually said the point that I was going to raise, that I get the feeling you're suggesting that because musicians, like rock musicians, because kids look up to them, that when they set a particular kind of example, the kids will follow it. But I think the important thing about the new wave is that they're not rock stars. They're like the kids, you know.
But they're far away from the kids.
Sure, they're kind of like they're a symbol, if you like. They become symbolic. I mean, like a perfect example. I'm coming back to this commercial thing as well. A group like Sham 69. I mean, like Jimmy Percy of Sham 69 is a great new wave punk, whatever you like to call it, singer who just has a certain kind of mass appeal to a certain kind of youth, you know, from exactly the same background that he came from. So he's communicating something to them, and you can't commercialize on that communication. You can commercialize the style, which is what happened, and as a result it's become degraded. What you can't commercialize is the communication, which brings us very neatly back to Paul's music, because people ask us, you know, when you make an album, do you think about kind of how many records you're going to sell or anything like this? And the thing that I find most amazing about Paul McCartney's music is the fact that he communicates on such a fundamental level that he breaks down all kinds of barriers. I mean, barriers of language, barriers of different musical style, whatever. It appeals on an archetypal level. It appeals almost on that kind of symbolic level. And he manages to transcend all the commercial aspects of music, you know. And I think that when Paul is really at his best, he's communicating something that maybe, you know, is a lesson to people, but not on an intellectual level. It's just that if it makes people feel good, it's an emotional lesson, you know, that if you feel good doing it. And what Steve was saying, that like music should make you feel good, but not just on that level, but just on a very subtle level, you know.
Steve just said one word that was quite interesting to me, especially interesting. He was talking about flower power, and I think we are all the same age, and you already have seen the 60s, and you can well remember. And there was a point. There was just the same industry destroyed that feeling, and the whole scene made everything. Yeah, destroyed everything, I think. Or am I wrong?
I'm not convinced that it destroyed it. I believe it capitalized on it.
Do you regret this?
Sorry?
Do you regret this?
I did at the time. I certainly did at the time, and I suppose if I answer that seriously, yes, I do. But the important part about that whole movement is the message at the time was very, very simple.
Yeah.
And for me, that message was like, I've just literally had enough of bickering, backbiting, like wars, all the rest of it. Like everybody, like it's about time everybody just got down and said like, okay, this is no big deal. We are no big deal. This is like a little planet, in a little solar system in a huge universe, and we're just, why, you know, with a short life, are we bothering shooting people? Why are we doing all this stuff? It's crazy, you know. I mean, and that still to me is the ultimate point. But unfortunately, it's the same as our situation in Northern Ireland. I mean, I often thought, well, I'm sure the kids aren't really into that. They don't want to go about blowing each other up. But if somebody was to come in here now while we're in this interview and just shoot Lawrence, I'm going to go for him. I mean, anybody will. I mean, that's just like a basic human emotion. I mean, if somebody hurts somebody that's a friend of yours, or your brother, or your wife, or your sister, or your mother, or anybody, you feel that you want to retaliate. So that is the never-ending chain of events, because like that always sets off a reaction. But coming back to the flower power thing, the important point to me was that message was shouted all over the world, and it made an impression. And I don't care how much the industry capitalised on it by making millions of silk caftans and making fortunes for some people. I don't care about that, because I know the feeling that was in my mind at the time, and the generation I grew up with, and the people that are still there now, and they're running the whole damn show. And some of those people's opinions have never changed. They're real opinions. The front they might look different, they may have cut their hair, but the basic mentality remains, and that's the important thing for me. Is it was a good step in the right direction as far as I'm concerned.
Final question, because I see my tape is running short. Final question should be: when I look around today, today's music, I can see that there came a lot of nonsense, especially from Munich, because I can remember. Donna Summer, for example, and Munich scene and Munich sound was born here, and it made its way all over the world. And I regret it, because I'm not too great a fan of this music. And industry and musicians and everybody's looking for a new music. They're looking, they push reggae, they push punk, they push everything, but no, they go back to rock and roll, but they don't find the future music. What could it be? What could it be, the future music?
The only thing that I can say to that is a story that Paul told me. When he and John Lennon first started writing, they would sit around and try and think, what is going to be the next thing? What is going to be the next music? They didn't know it was them. You know? I mean, like, the next thing can be the tune you've got in your head right now. It doesn't matter what's next. It's what's happening now, you know? Like, you should make music for the moment, because that's the most important thing, you know. And if somebody happens to think that is like next year's great thing, you know, when next year comes, then that's good. But you know, you should just express what you have to express.
Steve, do you think the same?
Yeah, more or less. I think that if you look for something, it's often very hard to find. I believe that it's there anyway. And it certainly is for all those kids that are leaping about in the clubs. I mean, they're not concerned about what's the next new thing. As far as they're concerned, they've got it. And I felt the same, and I'm sure you did. And I don't think that changes. There isn't a great new thing. I mean, it's all a great thing. The whole damn show, as far as I'm concerned, is a great thing. You know, no matter how sick it might get or how disgusting, there's always great times to be had as well, and there's always good things happening. So I try not to be too pessimistic.